March from Suffering to Strength. I am Martha Washington today, and I'm so excited to do this last presentation of our Spot of Tea and 250 years of history right before our 250th celebration of our country. And shall I just scoot forward? Okay.
And those are the old, if you want to say anything about them.
Right. So these, putting this program together was just the highlight of the year for me. And getting these speakers was just wonderful. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. No. Thank you.
Read it off there instead.
Okay, great. And everyone I spoke to was willing to come and, but we look forward to continuing a program like this. Maybe not every week, but we want to continue a speaker afternoon program. So, of course, we had Dr. Stephen Nolt, Ambassador John Craig, Nancy Landis, Dr. Michelle Cosmore, Dr. Leroy Hopkins, Nelson Polite, Ross Hedrick, Debbie Saylor, Roy Goodman. Nelson Polite came again, Michael Harris, Phil Clark, and now me. So without further ado, we will get started. Okay. Oh, we want to thank Trellis Marketplace for their wonderful food. Thank you, Trellis. Susan is over there. Susan owns Trellis and her daughter Pam. Okay. And, a little bit about what we do. Oh, you took a picture before. Okay. I set this all up. Oh, very nice, Robin. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is myself, Martha Washington. So now Martha was born on June 2nd, 1731. Making her 8 months older than George Washington. Martha married Daniel Parke Custis on May 15th, 1750. He was the richest man around. If you knew that, raise your hand. He was the richest man in Virginia, and she acquired all this wealth. She came from money, too. Martha gave birth to 4 children. I have to go back because I forget the year that, I'm sorry. I should learn this. Okay. Martha gave birth to 4 children, all of whom she outlived. 2 children became adults. 2 children died young. Martha became a widow on July 8th, 1757, and she was the richest widow around. They say George did not go after her for her money, though. They were very much attracted to each other. And they were married on January 6th, 1759. And there's a rendition or a remake of their wedding picture. Okay, and there are 2 of the children that survived childhood, and she was always worried about her children. And that was her first concern, were her children and their health. And later in life, her daughter did die from epilepsy, and then later in life, her son died when he was 26. And then George and Martha took 2 of the grandchildren in. And then she was always worried about their health. And that's what came first in her life, or my life. No. Okay, after they got married, they moved to Mount Vernon. They didn't stay, where Martha came from, where Martha's plantation was. She was in charge of the plantation and worked it. And she did a wonderful job, the history tells us, about running that plantation. But she was happy to go to Mount Vernon, and George got everything ready for her there. But this picture looks a little more subdued, and how did we get to this point? Okay, well, let's take a little look. We're going to get a little background, okay? So in 1776, there were 13 colonies, okay? And then you're going to see what led up to that point in time. Where we saw that picture of Martha with George, okay? So we have to look at the end of the French and Indian War. After 9 years of war with the French, the British have cemented their control of the 13 colonies, but are in a huge amount of debt. To repay the war loans, they look to begin implementing new taxes in the colonies. Okay, March 22nd, 1765, the Stamp Act is implemented. The Stamp Act was one of the single biggest causes of colonial discontent towards the British crown in the New World. It stipulated that most types of printed media, including everything from newspapers to playing cards, had to be printed on special British paper, which was sold with a large tax. In response, there were widespread protests in the colonies against the Stamp Act. Then we had the Boston Massacre in March 5th of 1770. So after continued efforts to implement unjust taxes on the colonists, such as through the Townshend Acts, discontent with the British was at an all-time high. In the late 1760s, this was particularly true in Boston, which was a hotbed of protests, riots, and demonstrations against the British. On March 5th, 1770, 2 British soldiers guarding the Boston Common House got into an argument with a local boy, which escalated to the point where they were surrounded by an angry mob of several hundred people. The British were backed up by a handful of additional soldiers, but the situation kept escalating until the point when one of them was knocked over by a projectile. At this point, a volley of shots was fired into the crowd, hitting 11 people and killing 5. Immediately, Patriot leaders labeled this incident the Boston Massacre. Paul Revere created an etching for propaganda purposes, showing the soldiers in a line firing on a cowering crowd. In reality, the volley of shots was much less controlled, and no order to fire was given out as depicted in the image. So then we have the Boston Tea Party. And in 1773, the British implemented the Tea Act in the 13 colonies. This gave the East India Company, a British enterprise, an exclusive tax break on tea imports into America, allowing them to undercut the prices of colonial merchants and smugglers who had previously profited from the tea trade. In a protest on December 16, 1773, the Sons of Liberty, a patriot rebel group, boarded East India Company ships docked in Boston Harbor and threw approximately $1 million worth of tea into the sea. This alone was considered, This alone was considered a huge crime by the British, but the Patriots did not stop there. In Philadelphia and New York, other East India ships were turned around, and this event led to even more unrest in the 13 colonies. Then in April 1775, tensions continued to rise between the Loyalist and Patriot sides. The British ordered General Gage and his troops to advance on Concord, Massachusetts, to capture colonial magazines containing weapons, gunpowder, and artillery. The Patriots knew about this plan and had moved their supplies, but the nearby town of Lexington was still of significant strategic significance. On the night of April 18, 1775, Joseph Warren, a Sons of Liberty member in Boston, told Paul Revere and William Dawes that the British were planning to march on Lexington and conquered the very next day. Revere and Dawes got on their horses and rode through the night towards Lexington. Do you know what they called out?
The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere.
Very good. They did not say the British are coming, the British are coming. They said the regulars are coming. It was not, yeah, it was not as we know it, but it's fun to say that, right? So patriots, they warned patriots along the way. He and other riders who had joined him were eventually captured near Concord, but their mission was a success. The patriots had time to prepare for the British Army's advance. April 19, 1775, the shot heard round the world. The morning after Revere's ride, the Revolutionary War officially started. It is unclear to this day where the first shot was fired and by whom. However, the conflict is widely considered to have started at Lexington's Battle Green. Okay, then in June of 1775 at the Battle of Bunker Hill. The Battle of Bunker Hill was fought for control of the Charleston Peninsula, a strategically significant area in the fight for control of the city of Boston. Although the battle is named after Bunker Hill, the majority of the fighting took place on the adjacent lower hill known as Breed's Hill in the Charleston Peninsula north of Boston on June 17, 1775. During the siege of Boston, colonial forces, commanded by Colonel William Prescott, had originally intended to fortify Bunker Hill, but they constructed their main redoubt on Breed's Hill instead, which was closest to Boston and more strategically located. The British won the battle, but suffered a much larger number of casualties than the Patriots. Bunker Hill demonstrated that the rebels could hold their own against a larger, better equipped, and better organized militia. Okay, 1775. My world was just turned around because Washington was appointed commander-in-chief. We had a lovely existence at Mount Vernon, and then this happened. And it just changed my whole world. The Second Continental Congress made a significant amount of progress in organizing the Patriot military forces. Up to now, the rebels had fought as a group of ragtag militias, and Patriot political leaders wanted to make their forces more organized. On June 14, 1775, the Continental Army was officially formed, and 5 days later, on the 19th, the Congress appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. So then on January 10th of 1776, Thomas Paine publishes Common Sense. In the 13 colonies, printed pamphlets were often used to spread news, propaganda, and other information to members of the public. These pamphlets could quickly be printed and were often read aloud in public places, meaning their messages could easily be distributed to tens or hundreds of thousands of people. And so right down here at the sign of the bear, they were probably reading the Common Sense pamphlet, Thomas Paine's, but they also said that on my research, there were churches in the area that would also read to their congregations and therefore build up that force for American independence. On January 10, 1776, Thomas Paine published Common Sense, a political pamphlet that argued for independence from Great Britain. It spread like wildfire and is estimated to have sold over 500,000 copies by the end of the Revolution. Now, my research also showed that today it is still among one of the most bought pamphlets, most bought pieces of literature. If you find other, tell me, but that's what my research uncovered. Common Sense is considered one of the most effective pieces of propaganda used in the American Revolution and likely helped to sway many people's opinion in favor of war with the United Kingdom. And then July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence. The Second Continental Congress formally declared the 13 colonies independent from Britain, creating the United States of America. The Declaration of Independence was signed by all 56 delegates to the Congress, and these men became known as the founding fathers of the United States. Washington used the Declaration to inspire his troops, and its adoption led to the destruction of many symbols of the monarchy in areas of the country that the Patriots controlled. And there's the Declaration of Independence, and I'm sure you've all seen that before. Okay, but now what happened? We still don't know what got Martha Washington to that point in that picture, okay? So the colonists, the Continental Army was not doing very well at all. And this is after General Washington took over. I'm sorry to say, my husband, although a good man, lost a few battles. So this is the Battle of Brandywine. On September 11th, 1777, an American force of about 11,000 men, commanded by Washington, attempted to halt a British advance into Pennsylvania. The Americans were defeated near Chad's Ford on Brandywine Creek by approximately 18,000 British and Hessian troops under Howe. Okay, on September 26, 1777, the British Army marched into Philadelphia, beginning an occupation that lasted until the following spring. Its arrival led patriots to flee and loyalists to rejoice, although wartime shortages soon led to suffering for those who remained in the city. And then the Battle of Germantown occurred at Cliveden, the country home of Pennsylvania Chief Justice Benjamin Chew, on October 4, 1777. A British regiment occupied Cliveden and defended it from full assault by the colonials, I'm sorry. Okay, so this led to winter at Valley Forge. So remember, Philadelphia is occupied by the British. Washington says he has a ragtag group of men, and he doesn't know what to do. He's lost a few battles, and there's a lot more history that I'm not getting into unless you want to be here till 8 o'clock, but which I could do. But anyway, so now what are they going to do for the winter? Washington occupies Valley Forge, and Valley Forge was surrounded by rich farmland where mainly Welsh Quaker farmers grew wheat, rye, hay, Indian corn, and other crops, and raised livestock, including cattle, sheep, pigs, and barnyard fowl. Settlers of German and Swedish descent also lived nearby. In the summer of 1777, the Continental Army's Quartermaster General, Thomas Mifflin, decided to station a portion of the Continental Army supplies in the buildings in the village because the area had a variety of structures and was a secluded location surrounded by 2 hills. Fearing such a concentration of military supplies would become a target for British raids, the Forge's ironmaster, William Dewees, Jr., expressed concern about the Army's proposal. Mifflin heeded Dewees' concerns, but established a magazine at Valley Forge anyway. I don't know if I told you now, this is not Martha talking, but my husband and I, our honeymoon was at Valley Forge. So that's my love. You see how much I love Valley Forge, and I took my husband there. Anyway, of course, you've heard it was a cold and hard winter. In December of 1777, about 12,000 soldiers with approximately 400 to 500 women and children accompanied them. So wives and children would follow along, and they were called camp followers. The men chopped down trees and built small wooden huts to live in, but they had very little food or warm clothes. Washington later wrote of the march into Valley Forge, this is what he said, to see men without clothes to cover their nakedness, without blankets to lay on, without shoes by which their marches might be traced by the blood from their feet, and almost as often without provisions as with, marching through frost and snow, and at Christmas taking up their winter quarters within a day's march of the enemy, without a house or hut to cover them, till they could be built, and submitting to it without a murmur is a mark of patience and obedience, which in my opinion can scarce be paralleled. So he knew what these men were going through. Some wrapped their feet in rags because they didn't have boots. There wasn't enough food to go around. The soldiers mostly ate simple bread made from flour and water called fire cakes. Because it was so cold and everyone was so weak, sickness spread quickly. Many soldiers got smallpox or other diseases. Around 2,000 men died before spring came. But even though things were terrible, the army didn't give up. The soldiers kept believing in what they were fighting for freedom. General Washington stayed right there with them, walking through camp, talking to his men, and keeping their spirits up. And do you know what Washington had all the men do, as well as Martha, to help with the disease? Inoculation against smallpox. And Martha did it too. And then you had to survive the inoculation too. Okay, now this I took right off of the site from Valley Forge. If you want to go on the National Park Service website for Valley Forge, there are videos, they're wonderful. There's wonderful information about everyone who lived there, who stayed there, who worked there, anybody, well, the people who were there during this time, okay? Now, the one thing they thought were the locals would provide them with food, but the locals didn't sell them the food. Do you know why? Oh, yeah, because they wanted the gold that the British had, not the paper money that the colonials had. So the people living in the nearby area didn't sell them food. So that was one of the reasons they were starving. Cabins were cold. In a letter to his wife, Adrienne, Lafayette, and I'll say a little more about Lafayette, described those huts as small barracks which are scarcely more cheerful than dungeons. Food was scarce, disease was rampant. Okay, and this is the stone house where George Washington stayed during the Valley Forge winter encampment. And it's also known as Washington's headquarters at Valley Forge. And it's the Isaac Potts house. Built around 1773 by the Potts family, a wealthy ironmaster in Valley Forge, the house served as Washington's residence and headquarters from late December 1777 until June of 1778. At the time, Washington rented it from Deborah Hughes, who was renting it from her relative, Isaac Potts. The structure is a 2.5-story Georgian stone building with a full cellar, and today it's part of the Valley Forge National Historic Park. While living there, Washington wrote letters to the Continental Congress requesting supplies and rations. He worked to maintain morale and leadership, countering criticism from the Conway cabal George Washington. Okay, he oversaw training, and then, but things, you know, he knew the men were not what they were going through, and you can only imagine what his prayer was at this time. And so, right now, you have Washington, this was very important to the war, was the spies. And there were many ways that they got messages out. Yeah, I hope I don't fall on my, I hope Martha doesn't fall down. You want to pass this out. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to figure out. George Washington is receiving a, he's receiving a message. We don't want people to know what the message is. Okay, it is a cipher. And if you need a little help deciphering the cipher, you need this to help you decipher the cipher. Oh, yeah, Kathy, we need, Robin needs one? Okay. And I'm waiting to see the first person who knows what message Washington is receiving. Okay. You need deciphering the cipher. Okay. How to do? Do you need one, Susan? Okay, so that tells you how to decipher the cipher. Oh, yes, you certainly can. Okay. What message is Washington receiving? Oh, yeah, you guys didn't get it back there? Okay. I figured you were the most intelligent and could figure out the cipher. Do you have one? Lori, would you get it? Okay. When you decipher, when you know the message George is getting, just yell it out. No, raise your hand. I guess we'll just go forward with that. Yeah.
Leave it on.
Yeah.
Go to the next one.
You know what was Martha's picture? No, okay. I just,
For anyone looking online.
oh, okay.
Next one.
Oh, I see.
There we go. I got the whole.
Okay. So did everybody figure out? The first number is the line, the second number is the word in the line, and the third number is the letter in the word. So under each set of three figures, you're writing one letter. So 171, that would mean the first line, the seventh word, and the first letter in the seventh word. So it's line, word, letter.
Override, zip over S from the second line.
Martha arrives at camp, and then it's under moonlight. I might have said a little bit more. I forget, but Martha arrives at camp under moonlight. So I'm going to start, okay? So much of Martha's time at the encampment was spent running the household. Martha did join George. I did visit George every winter, wherever he was. He always called for me. And much of her time at the encampment was spent running the household at Washington's headquarters. This would include organizing daily meals for the staff and entertaining guests and officers' wives. She played a vital role in keeping spirits high and the officers of the Army. According to Pierre, I'm sorry, my French is not all that good, Etienne Deponcy, CEAU, secretary to Baron von Steuben, in the midst of all our distress, there were some bright sides of the picture which Valley Forge exhibited. Mrs. Washington has the courage to follow her husband to that dismal abode. Okay. At Valley Forge, I'm just going to go, yeah, okay. So this is, at Valley Forge then, they spent the winters, and they got some new generals from overseas, and this is Lafayette, and then they also, I'm sorry, this may be von Steuben, and then a man named von Steuben changes everything. In February 1778, George Washington rode out of Valley Forge to meet Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben. According to reports from Benjamin Franklin, writing from his post in France, Steuben was a lieutenant general from a noble Prussian family who had served his ruler Frederick the Great faithfully on the battlefield, and who now lived on income from his numerous estates. While the many Americans who feted Baron von Steuben from Portsmouth to Boston and finally to York might have been impressed with General Washington General Washington was more taken with the general's sincerity. As Steuben explained in a recent letter to Washington, the only object of his greatest ambition was to render your country all the services in my power and to deserve the title of the citizen of America. So you have to stay tuned and find out if he ever became a citizen of America. That was his one biggest goal. Now, von Steuben taught the soldiers how to march, line up, load their muskets quickly, and fight together like a team. Before this, the Army was brave but not very organized. Von Steuben's lessons turned them into a strong, smart, professional army. He even wrote a training book called the Blue Book that showed soldiers exactly how to move and fight. They practiced every day, even in the snow. Slowly, the men started to feel proud and confident again. And that Blue Book was used for years. Robin, did you know about the Blue Book from von Steuben? I think they used it up until the 1940s. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, so thank you, Liz. The soldiers were stronger, healthier, and ready to fight again. Around the same time, America got some great news that France had decided to help in the war. That meant more soldiers, supplies, and ships to fight the British. The British Army, led by General Henry Clinton, decided to leave Philadelphia and go back to New York City. Washington and his newly trained army left Valley Forge and went after them. That was in June of 1778. The British left Philadelphia on June 18th and marched through Mount Holly and Bordentown. They reached Monmouth Courthouse on June 27th and stopped for a day to rest. The Americans left Valley Forge on June 19th and marched to Doylestown and then on to Hopewell, New Jersey. They camped near Englishtown on June 27th. Loyalists took advantage of the opportunity to exact revenge on freehold patriots, identifying their homes and, after plundering them, setting them ablaze. These barbaric acts became known as the sack of Monmouth Courthouse. And while this behavior was reprehensible to Clinton and his Hessian generals, they took no measures to stop it. So the red is the route of the British, and the blue is the route of the colonial army from Valley Forge to Monmouth Courthouse. Now, I'm out of character. I lived in Freehold, New Jersey, a few miles from the Monmouth battlefield where this battle took place. And so they have a reenactment every year. This past weekend was just the reenactment. I'm surprised because every year the reenactment is the hottest day of the year, as well was the battle. So let's find out a little bit about Monmouth. But remember, now they're feeling a little more confident, they're more organized. Von Steuben was great in getting them into that, like an organized army. So the British began to leave Monmouth Courthouse on the morning. On June 28th, when their rear guard was attacked by the American advance force east of Monmouth Courthouse, Clinton sent Cornwallis's division back to face them. The American troops led by Lee were forced to retreat to the west of Freehold, where they met Washington's main force near Tennant. So Lee is retreating. How do you think Washington took that? That was, I forget his name now. No relation to Robert E. Lee. I'll tell you that.
The general's son, Henry Lighthorse Lee's son, was Robert E. Lee.
Yeah, so this Lee is no relation to. Do you remember, Liz? And yeah, I can't remember. Maybe. So George Washington had arrived in Englishtown roughly an hour and a half ahead of the Continental Army's main body and sat down for breakfast sometime around 10 in the morning. June 28, 1778, 6 miles away, Major General Charles Lee, there's the name, vanguard of roughly 5,000 men, was just about to throw itself at the British rear guard north of Monmouth Courthouse. Washington had ridden ahead of the main body toward the sound of musket fire in the distance. Arriving in the fields west of the village, he expected to find Lee engaged with the enemy and pinning him in place. The situation was much different, and he was greeted by retreating men along the road from Englishtown. Quickly learning that Lee's force was falling back in the face of the enemy, Washington continued on toward Pine Ridge, a gently sloping rise north of the road and several miles west of the village. There he attempted to rally some of the troops nearby and form them up in a defensive line. He then rode forward to General Lee and said, "Here, unfortunately, for the honor of the Army and the welfare of America, Washington's aide, John Lawrence, remembers General Washington met the troops retreating in disorder and without any plan to make an opposition." Lee was situated further east and south of the road on a hill near the Rhea farm when Washington found him. The exchange that occurred between the two commanders has fallen victim to myth over the centuries. Many widely accepted versions of the encounter have come from individuals who either recollected it decades later or were not even present at the time. Charles Lee, who obviously was there, remembered it as follows. "When I arrived first in Washington's presence, conscious of having done nothing that could draw on the least censure, but rather flattering myself with its congratulation and applause, I confess I was disconnected, astonished, and confounded by the words and the manner in which His Excellency accosted me. The terms, I think, were these: I desire to know, sir, what is the reason whence arises this disorder and confusion. The manner in which he expressed them was much stronger and more severe than the expressions themselves. When I recovered myself sufficiently, I answered that I saw or knew of no confusion but what naturally arose from disobedience of orders, contradictory intelligence, and the impertinence and presumption of individuals who were vested with no authority, intruding themselves in matters above them and out of their sphere. That the retreat was contrary to my intentions, contrary to my orders, and contrary to my wishes. To which he replied, "All may be very true, sir, but you ought not to have undertaken it unless you intended to go through with it." After this exchange, according to Lee's aide, Captain John Mercer, who was in fact present, Washington simply passed him by and continued on. But post-war accounts of the meeting between the two men would have Washington calling Lee a damned poltroon and swearing until the leaves shook on trees. And a poltroon, I think, is a traitor, if I remember correctly. Okay, Lafayette and Charles Scott, respectively, passed their versions. Neither of them was there when it happened, so their accounts must be viewed as pure exaggerations. Neither was a fan of Lee. But I wanted to show you this really is what Monmouth, the park looks like, Monmouth Battlefield Park looks like today. There's a row of trees, there's a big hill, and you can see the Continental Army coming up over the ridge there. And as I said, that day was extremely hot. The heat was incredible. Let me go forward here. Okay, this is, if anybody's more interested, this was where the troops went and where they retreated, where they went forward, and how it lasted. But the fresh troops stopped the British advance around noon. After a long midday cannonade, the two sides sparred with each other in the late afternoon, but neither side could gain an advantage. The weather was extremely hot and humid, over 90 degrees. A large number of soldiers on both sides got sick, and some even died from heat prostration and lack of water. The British pulled their lines back late in the day, and that night the British resumed their march to Sandy Hook. You can see down here, there's a little trickle of water here. Yeah, there wasn't much around. But out of this came the tale of, does anybody know who she is? Molly Pitcher, right. And Molly Ludwig Hayes was born on October 13, 1754. Historians argue over where she was born, but she was either born in Philadelphia or New Jersey. She grew up in a small, modest household, and her parents were German immigrants. It was unlikely that she would have learned to read or write during this time. When she was in her early 20s, she married a barber named William Hayes. Hayes decided to enlist in the 4th Pennsylvania Artillery and served in the Continental Army when the American Revolutionary War began. And remember, wives and children followed the camps. So it was very common for soldiers' wives to follow their husbands when they enlisted in the Army. Mary Hayes decided to join her husband at the Continental Army camp, where she often washed clothes and cared for the sick. Historians note that this is where the nickname Molly Pitcher could have originated from. Molly was a common nickname given to women that were named Mary, and Pitcher represented the buckets women would carry for cleaning. I also read in my research that men would call women Molly. So I don't know if they didn't even know their name was Mary or not. They would say, Moll, get me the food or whatever. They would refer to women as Molly. Whether that's completely true, I tend to believe that the men all knew their name was Mary and called them Molly. On June 28, 1778, Mary Hayes enlisted to serve with Captain Francis Proctor's company, and many of the men who knew Mary often described her as a 22-year-old woman who smoked and chewed tobacco and swore as well as any of the male soldiers. She gained popularity among the troops because of her hard work under fire and her bravery. During the Battle of Monmouth on June 28, Hayes allegedly solidified her legacy as an American hero. Historians report that about 50 soldiers died of thirst and dehydration that day. This meant that as many men died from heat exhaustion as they did from gunfire. Hayes went back and forth into the battle to bring water to thirsty soldiers from a nearby spring. She stayed on the battlefield bringing water and caring for wounded soldiers until her own husband got hurt. When her husband was wounded during this battle, she made the decision to take his place at the cannon and began firing. Now again, with research, that hasn't been proven. They have no written record of her ever picking up and working the cannons, but they do know she brought water to the men. George Washington asked about the courageous woman who was on the battlefield and promoted her to a non-commissioned officer for this reason. Hayes carried the nickname Sergeant Molly. Yeah. So this, I took pictures. We have a million pictures of Monmouth battlefield, of course, my sons, and we went there a lot. But these are Molly's wells, and they have little, stone markers around. These are two different spots. When I just went back in the wintertime, they were having a walk of Molly's wells, and I'm like, how many wells did she have? Where did she go? And they were taking people to 11 wells where they think they got water from. But you can drive up alongside. It's just a little stone, and you pull aside, and you can see where Molly Pitcher's well was. Okay. So the battle was technically a draw. Neither side was able to outfit the other, but the British claimed a victory because they defeated Lee's advance force and they stopped the Americans from attacking their long column of wagons and supplies. The Americans claimed victory because they occupied the battlefield after the British left. This greatly increased American morale and strengthened Washington's position as commander of the army. Monmouth was the biggest and longest one-day battle of the war. The two sides did not engage in any large battles in the North after Monmouth. General Washington reported 69 Patriot men died, 161 wounded, and 132 missing. Total loss was 362. British numbers are uncertain, but were approximately 67 killed in action, 59 died of fatigue, and 170 wounded, and 65 missing, and that's a total of 361. Okay, so here are pictures of the today of Monmouth battlefield park. It looks just like this. The hill goes way up. This is a favorite spot for the area to go sledding in the wintertime. So kids of all ages, hundreds and thousands of kids have gone down this hill sledding, where once this battle took place. But as you well know, it was hot, and the men didn't take off their uniforms. They were, that disciplined. And some more scenes from a reenactment of the Battle of Monmouth here. 4 miles away, they say 4 miles away, but I think it's closer, there's this church. It's called Tennant Church. And this church, the congregation was formed in 1692 by a group of Scottish dissenters who had fled their homeland to escape James II's severe persecution for their beliefs. It has occupied the current building since 1751, and the structure has undergone little fundamental change. The church once served as a hospital during the Battle of Monmouth, which raged on June 28, 1778. So here's a picture of the interior of the church. And I'm showing you that because there's something I'm going to tell you. Now, this is the site of common grave of Continental soldiers who fell at Monmouth June 28, 1778, known only to God. So they have a marker there for that. And then again, they have another marker on the outside. This is present today. But here are, if you go visit the cemetery, they have, if not 50, they've got to have 50 grave sites for the American Revolution soldiers. And they're marked by these markers here. This is the story of Joshua Huddy, and he was an American military officer and privateer known for his role in the American Revolutionary War. And I won't read everything. He was born in Salem County, New Jersey, into a prominent Quaker family. He was the oldest of 7 brothers and faced numerous challenges throughout his life, including financial difficulties and legal troubles. He was expelled from the Quaker community in 1757 for disorderly conduct and struggled with debt, which led to the sale of his 300-acre plantation. So by no means was Joshua Huddy the best outstanding citizen, okay? But stay tuned. During the American Revolutionary War, Huddy became a staunch supporter of the Patriot cause. He served in the New Jersey militia and captained the privateer ship, the Black Snake. His military actions included participating in the hanging of a captured loyalist and leading militia assaults against British forces. He was known for his zealous commitment to the revolutionary cause, often engaging in aggressive tactics against loyalists. Okay, now in 1782, Huddy was captured by the loyalists and handed over to the British forces. Shortly thereafter, he was executed by hanging, an act that incited outrage among the patriots and led to the Asgill affair, where the Continental Army sought retribution by threatening to execute a British officer in retaliation. This incident highlighted the tensions and brutalities of the war, and diplomatic intervention ultimately led to the release of the British officer. So this happened like right towards the end of the Revolutionary War. This man, who was not the most outstanding of citizens, was captured, hung, and then the Patriots wanted a British soldier to be hung in retaliation. George Washington struggled with what to do because he knew how the troops wanted this to happen, but he didn't really want it to happen. And then the end of the Revolutionary War came, so Washington was saved that difficult decision of, hanging a British soldier. So that's one story from Monmouth battlefield, and this is just one more. This one is, I find, the most fascinating. So this is the soldier at Old Tennant Church. The soldier who became part of Old Tennant Church legend was Captain Henry Fauntleroy, and he was a 22-year-old of the 5th Virginia Regiment. According to local tradition, during the Battle of Monmouth, Fauntleroy was resting in the church cemetery. Now remember, he's 4 miles from the battle going on. And he was leaning on the graves of fallen soldiers to recover from heat exhaustion. While he sat, a stray cannonball struck him in the leg and sheared off the top of the nearby red sandstone tombstone. His comrades carried him into the church. That's why I showed you the interior of the church. And they performed an amputation to save his life. Despite the efforts, he died from massive blood loss. Fauntleroy is buried in the churchyard, and his tombstone bears the inscription, "Killed by a cannonball at the Battle of Monmouth, 28th of June." The saw marks and the blood stains from the amputation are still visible in the church pews, and the broken tombstone remains as a physical reminder of the event. So you can go into the church and and see the saw marks. Yeah, quite a story. Well, anyway, from Valley Forge and the struggle and the hardships they endured, the winter, the snow, the lack of food, you name it, came von Steuben and to Monmouth Courthouse, where they became an organized Continental Army that helped win the American Revolution. And there, I put in Tennant Church, and this was Baron von Friedrich August Heinrich Ferdinand von Steuben, and yes, he did become a citizen of the United States before he died. And this was Lafayette. If you want to know more about Lafayette, I can tell you. I won't get into all that now. But courage, compassion, and equality are born when ordinary people step forward in extraordinary moments. Molly's story reminds us that bravery is not confined to rank, uniform, or gender. It lives in the human heart. And with that, we close our spot of tea and 250 years of history. So I hope you enjoyed. I know there was a lot of, I read a lot of facts, but up here I also put the 13 colonies and I don't know if you took a look over here, how many enrolled in the Continental Army, how many came from state militias, and how many, were part of the Continental Army. And then I just put some pictures around, representing some important pictures from each of the 13 colonies. And then the postcards here are from Monmouth Battlefield Park. So I went it was the end of the winter. I went about February or March back to Monmouth Battlefield. I wanted to gather some things together. And I was taking pictures of their museum and things. And then the man who ran the gift shop there, he had a little dog, a little white, I don't know what type of dog, a little cute white dog. And what do you think his dog's name was? Molly Pitcher. So I said to my son and my daughter-in-law, I said, did anybody get a picture of Molly Pitcher? And they said, no, we obey rules. I said, what are you talking about? Here, I was taking pictures of the museum, and there's a big sign that says, do not take pictures. But the gentleman let me because he knew what I was going to be doing with him. But anyway, thank you very much. I look forward to providing more afternoon talks for you. We'll take the summer off because I am going to do a summer program for kids. And then you'll see us at the Elizabethtown Fair. And then once fall opens up, we should have some okay. Oh, future tentative, nothing. I'm sorry, Robin. But we want to start gathering some more speakers and things. Oh, the 3rd, yes. Okay, the 3rd. Oh, here. Oh, thank you. Yes. Here we are going to have a story hour from 10 to 11 and for kids. If adults want to join, yeah, I'd love to hear. And then architectural tours, like anybody wants to walk in this heat, right? From 10 to 11. And then we are going to be showing Ken Burns' American Revolutionary DVD. So, of course, you won't be able to see the whole thing, but we'll play it here during the day. And then I did say we'd have games and activities out in the yard, but I'm sure nobody's going to come to that at the heat. And then at night, the fireworks, the borough's having fireworks, food trucks, fireworks, and kids' activities. But if you hang on 1 second, if everybody just sits, just 1 second, okay? Desk and just thank you so much for all you did, but you have to open it in front of everybody. Oh, it's Molly Pitcher. It's Molly Pitcher.